Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm hoping you can all hear me. I am just going to make some adjustments to this to make sure when I come off, everyone understands what I'm saying. Don't forget, in Devon, central Devon, at Chagford, on Sunday evening, we have 7 p.m. To meet, and there is a Restore Britain local organisation. So we just want to make sure everyone understands that. And if you're in Devon, you're from Devon, whatever, get there and come away. Right, here we go. I'm going to do a few things. So there's a few points tonight I want to cover off. I see some stuff. Hopefully everyone will be tuning in. So don't forget, sharing is caring. The more you share, the more you care. Don't forget to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. We've got to get the Rumble channel well in excess of 10,000, and there is, and we want to do that this year. You don't get any help on Rumble. There's no. How can I put this to everyone? There is no algorithms promoting you. So when you get 10,000, I mean, I've got 10,000 nearly. Well, actually, I've got 10,000 subscribers. But if you combine the two channels, I've got 9,000, whatever it is, 600 on this channel. It's not like YouTube. YouTube is they promote certain narratives. So does Twitter, right? So, and this is the important part. They suppress certain narratives. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, right? That's already been proved in a court of law in Texas, where the people that wanted secession from the Union of the United Independent States of America took it to court, and they won the court case because they asked for discovery from the judge about the algorithms that Facebook and other people were using to suppress what their argument was. In other words, it went against freedom of speech. And the judge demanded that he see the algorithms. He saw the algorithms and he said, switch them off. And they turned them off. And within 24 hours, their activity and their online presence went ballistic. Right. The same thing is happening. The people that are in charge of the suppression, oppression, censorship of English independence, in particular, in particular, for English independence, it comes from London, right? So Twitter London is directly suppressing and oppressing our voice. I've been taken down on YouTube. I've been taken down on Facebook. I've been taken down on every platform. The only platform, because it doesn't promote either. It's about you getting the message out, and that's why sharing is so important. All right, because I only speak of England. I'm not interested in anything else. But getting back to something, I'm going to show you some short clips of videos. And earlier on, when I watched it, I was pretty miffed by it. That was polite. I did a 6-minute video that was an absolute rant, but I never put it out. And the reason for that is because I had someone else, actually 2 people, contact me about that particular video, and I had a chat with them. One of the people up north in Cumbria said to me, when you put your arguments to people, and it is so professional, it is so calm that people listen to you. When we start swearing, shouting, and doing all that, we look like a bunch of thugs, and we're not a bunch of thugs. We're frustrated and angry that we have been conned so many times. And I want to make sure I emphasize this before I start. Rupert Lowe is the leader and the instigator of Restore Britain political party. He was also a leader of a movement, or he is a leader of a movement. His previous tweets, and his tweets certainly over St George's Day, confirm his previous tweets and the ones over St George's Day confirm that his opinion is he's English. He's proud to be English. He loves England. More than anyone I've seen before, apart from another guy called, again, I wish I had a digital camera where I can show you this stuff on the screen, England for the English, Richard Bodie. Now, this guy wrote this book. He's now deceased. He was a member of Parliament. And his only regret for writing that book was in his words, he was too politically correct. He needed to say it exactly as it is. And Rupert Lowe technically is doing that, right? He is not really, he's not in the business of political correctness. He's just saying it as it is. So upon saying that, there's a couple of videos or 3 videos I'm going to show you. And I'm going to comment on the videos after each one, but I'm going to do it in a very polite manner. Because there's some things that need to be addressed. I do believe, and I've said from the beginning of all of this, we're not shutting down the English Constitution Party. There was a guy called Andrew Fontaine that originally started off the BNP, and he started off the National Front, neither of which I was into because it was British. But that said, people recognised England and were more passionate about England in the 60s and 70s. And a lot of people have been brainwashed, especially in the schools and especially in the universities. They've been indoctrinated, not educated. But there's some of it which is deliberate, right? Can you all see and hear me, by the way? Give me a 5 in the chat, or better still, give me an English flag. So importantly, I'm going to say this as a very calm message to Restore Britain. Your leader and many of the people that are joining Restore want to see England restored. 2011 census, for the first time ever, English-only national identity was put in that census. It was done by the British government to find out where and who we are and where we live. From that point on, they flooded them areas with migrants, right? This is an attack on the English, and so is regionalisation, which I'm going to get to in a couple of minutes. You can't be an anti-establishment political party unless you challenge the establishment's views on the union. It's as simple as that. And what I was impressed with Mike Graham, even though he had Scottish ancestry, his mum and dad were both Scottish, he listened, right? He's not closed-minded, and he wants me to come back on the show. When you listen to Nigel Farage, and I showed a clip of him the other day talking about there is no English voice in that parliament, and English votes for English laws was got rid of by Boris Johnson. The English are not represented. The Scots have 50 odd MPs, right? It's the Scottish National Party, which they are socialists. They're not conservative in any form, right? They negotiated or wanted to negotiate with Hitler during the Second World War. They were stabbing England in the back. They were stabbing Churchill in the back. Churchill had a very similar situation developing to the English Civil War, where he had the Jacobites one end and the Jacobins the other. But one way or the other, we had to resolve that situation, and we come up with the English Bill of Rights. But you can't be an anti-establishment party unless you challenge the established union, because that is the establishment, right? Everyone can see that most of the migrants go to England. They don't go to Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland. In fact, if you sent them there, they'd come back to England. It is English young girls that have been raped all over England, which Rupert Lowe has listened to the testimony of those children. Again, if you read a book called Easy Meat, an 11-year-old girl had her tongue nailed to a table and was raped with a baseball bat by British Pakistanis, right? And it was because she was English that they did that. There are other people that have been attacked in Scotland and in Wales, very few in Northern Ireland, because they will stand up for themselves. They're more English than the English. But I just want to make sure everyone's aware of this. The only way we're going to be able to hold their feet to the fire is if people like us, as eloquently as possible, as politely as possible, young and old, join Restore Britain and push forward our arguments that we have got the very nasty red hot part of the stick, right? It is England that's being destroyed. So I'm going to play this video, but I do want to emphasize you cannot be anti-establishment unless you are going to challenge the established union in its current format. The two things are opposites. If you're gonna leave the union alone, you're not going to change anything at all, right? And I don't believe that is the vision of Rupert Lowe. I am very concerned with the people that he is allowing to counsel him, and that includes one of the guys which I'm going to show you in a couple of seconds. His name, and he's the guy Harrison Pitt. Now I'm going to show you a video in a couple of seconds. Before I do, I'm going to show you these videos. I'm going to bring it up on your screen and talk you through it. Hopefully you can see and hear me, right? So let's push this back up. Put this one on, go over to that, show you it on the screen. This is Harrison Pitt. Can Christian English, and by the way, this video was released on St. George's Day, and it is pro-unionism. My argument to everyone listening to this, and especially anyone who's going to be going into Restore Britain, is they have not had someone like me, in other words, not a middle-class, indoctrinated university graduate, promoting the established union practices, right? And I want everyone to understand that. So part of my frustration is you're not hearing the alternative voice from Restore Britain. And one of the crucial aspects of the art of the deal, Sun Tzu, business strategy, whatever way you want to describe it, is you must be prepared to walk away. And if you don't show the established union that you are prepared to walk away, they'll walk all over you. You're only going to come off worse off, not better off, right? So on this particular video, and I'm going to go through 3 of them, and there will be some people that understand this completely. Harrison Pitt is the person who wrote the program, the policy, the 100-page document on mass deportations. My only criticism of that document, and yes, I have read through it, is he has not mentioned the English Constitution. He has not mentioned the British Nationality Act of 1948, 1981, and abolishing it as being bad law because of the way it attacked and subverted the English Constitution, in particular the Acts of Union, the Act of Settlement 1701, right? And in particular, you can't have anyone in positions of an MP, Lord, or positions of profit unless they are born of English parents, all right? Now, if you read the Acts of Settlement, it included the Irish, the Welsh, and the Scots, right? So Britons could be in an English parliament. I would go further than that and say they can't be, right? But again, at the moment, there needs to be discussion on that. There's 5 million Scots, and it's the Scots wagging, the Scottish towel is wagging a dog. The same with Wales, the same with Northern Ireland, right? Now, there's crucial parts to this, but Tom Roswell is this so-called historian. He's also declared, which I'll show you the video, that he's of Scottish ancestry. And there's a number of things he says. But this in particular, on St. George's Day special of the Forge, Tom argues that England's tradition of tolerance has been exploited by alien faiths that it was never meant to include. Now, I agree with that. But there's other things that he says in here, and I need for everyone to understand what my take is.
I would say that there is a resurgence of neo-paganism going on. So it's not as sophisticated as the kind that you're interested in, which is much more sort of rooted in history. For most people, it is just a reflexive sense that Christianity has enfeebled the West and that we need to recommune with a sense of tribal identity because Christianity is too universal. Our software should not be running on this sort of desert alien religion. That's kind of the rough. We should recommune with our ancestral gods and all the rest of it. That tends to be the kind of the less detailed form of neo-paganism that is about today on the right. Do you think, despite the fact that there is this growing rift between English nationalists who are Christian, or English patriots who are Christian, and English patriots who are either atheist or have eccentric neo-pagan beliefs, do you think that we are nevertheless going to be able to present a united front in order to...
Well, I'm going to stop it there. I know quite a few pagans. I know pagans in our military that are absolutely pro-English. They haven't got a problem with Christians, apart from people that are Christians seeing them as eccentric, right? Or it was the original, and I've said this before on this show, even the Christian marriage ceremony comes from the pagan ceremonies, and I want everyone to understand that at least pagans worship the seasons and the animals, and they see things slightly differently, but on the whole, they're good people, right? And we have come together
to achieve demographic security this century and to rally around common symbols, common cultural symbols that testify to our shared status as Englishmen?
Yes, I do, because of the nature of English identity and what has happened since the Civil War. The Civil War was such a terrible event, so brutal, so disgraceful. We slaughtered so many of each other.
Right, I'm going to stop it there. The Civil War did include the Scots. And what they was fighting for against, I think it was Charles I, was that they wanted their Protestant religion to be acknowledged, right? And the Bill of Rights did that because they had the claim of right. It's really important that people understand some things, because as we go through this, I'm going to show you some more bits that this guy is presenting what I would describe as establishment propaganda, right? And that is, I mean, he goes on and he talks about Catholics being hanged in the street in the 1800s. I can show you the book, which I've got here today in front of me somewhere. And it's not about the elements of treason relate to Jesuits, and that is the military wing of the Catholics, right? He hasn't even mentioned that. He's obviously a Catholic. He hasn't even mentioned the Jesuits. He hasn't mentioned the military wing of the Jesuits, who, in my opinion, a strong opinion, are far more dangerous in this country than the Jews, right? And people keep banging on about the Jews. It's the Jews. It's the Jews. There's a Jew like me and you, and there's a Jewish mafia. But what sits there in silence, because no one speaks about them, a bit like no one ever spoke about the Fabian Society except me, no one ever talks about the Jesuits. It's in our law books. And just to make sure everyone is aware, he's spoken, and the tweet speaks about tolerance. We did have a Tolerance Act that was passed through Parliament. So I just want everyone to understand that. I'm going to keep playing this. Let me go back to all, and I'll play it for you. But have a listen.
And it basically, over the course of the 18th century, with some radical ideas I don't agree with emerged, but what I do agree with was that there was came about a kind of idea that we need to live with each other, and that's going to necessitate a certain tolerance of each other's religious differences. Now, this has subsequently been expanded to include very, very alien religions that were never initially intended to be included. But it was, I mean, even in the late 18th century, we were hanging Catholics in the streets of London. So this was a problem. I don't think that was a good thing. But what we reached by the 19th century was an extremely civilized culture, where in the late 19th century, that would be unthinkable.
Completely unthinkable.
Catholics would be hanged in the streets of Victorian London would never happen. So that was an improvement, I believe. So,
Me too.
but the and that's part of being English. That is what that is, and it's been exploited and saying, "Oh, you have to tolerate literally any thing that comes along." What it meant is that you have to tolerate other English people, other English people, and their religious differences.
Right, so I'm going to stop it there and hopefully go on to the next one. Touch wood. I will share this one to you, and it's important I show you these because Harrison Pitt is the person who is designing the policies. He's ignored the English Constitution completely. You got this guy that's been given a voice to say things that, whilst he is free to say it, because the British Unionists, or which are the British, right, own the media, own the alternative media, and you should have another voice on there. There's things that he says. So I'll give you an example of this one, and I'll show you on the screen, hopefully. Let me share it again. Harrison Pitt. Let's hopefully on the episode of The Forge. Argues that talk of English independence from the United Kingdom is counterproductive and will do nothing to make the peoples of British Isles stronger. That is absolutely rubbish. To continue with the Union in its current form, and especially with regionalisation, which they have renamed devolution, which they did with the European Union Constitution. They renamed it because people could see clearly what it was, and they called it the Maastricht Treaty. And then some of the countries approved of it because they renamed it, but it did exactly the same. Scotland is already lost. Scotland does not have a parliament. That is nonsense. It has a European Union Assembly. They've already removed the 7 constabularies from Scotland, police constabularies, and they now have a police regional force. In other words, it is a police state. Scotland technically is already lost, and it is because they want to have administrative law. Administrative law is in effect the Roman law. It is a cancer to England and the English. And people need to be able to speak to these people and put the other points across. So the Scots are aware that when England and people like me talk about independence, we are countering what the Labour Party have actually said to us directly. The Labour Party have said they will never allow independence because if they did that, they would never be in power again in England, which is the powerhouse of the economy. And the only reason they're kept in power is because of their support in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And that includes people like the SNP that could go into a coalition in Scotland with the SNP, or Sinn Féin in coalition with Unionists in Northern Ireland. Right? There's a big difference between the Loyalists, by the way, and the Unionists in Northern Ireland. So this information I'm about to show you, this is what he says. I believe this is one of the ones where and I am going to try my hardest not to rant.
Where do you stand on British unionism versus English independence?
I'm 100% with the Union.
Yes.
My Scottish ancestors were British patriots. They wanted the Union. I have like records. They had one of my Scottish ancestors in Edinburgh ran a pie shop covered in Union Jacks and pictures of the King. I have ancestors from Ireland. They were all, it was British then. They were all pro-British. This like anti-Britishness, I think, is well, sometimes is obviously funded by our enemies. It has been, yes, definitely. I think Gaddafi was funding. So I have to say that again because I touched the microphone. I think Gaddafi was funding some separatist groups within the British Isles, so that's been documented. But
just to make sure everyone's aware of this, he's being very economical with the truth, right? Gaddafi funded the IRA. He supplied their Semtex. He supplied their guns and ammunition. And they bombed England. They did not bomb Scotland. And they did not, apart from a minor bomb in the Shetland Islands once when the Queen visited. And they did not bomb Wales. Right? It's very important to understand this. Gaddafi's, one of his best friends was Tony Blair. Tony Blair tried to stop NATO from bombing Libya. Tony Blair was distressed when they killed Gaddafi, right? He was a socialist through and through. He wanted to do certain things that no one wanted him to do, and he carried on pushing it forward. The most important thing that he's just said there, and just let me express this, the French was also involved with the IRA. They used to assist by not interfering with Semtex and weapons transfers from ships in the Bay of Biscay, right? Those ships then left the Bay of Biscay, travelled through and round to Ireland, and those weapons and Semtex was unloaded in Ireland to attack particularly England, but Birmingham, London, etc. So the French was involved as well. There are other aspects of this that I can talk about, but Scotland was not in any way attacked, and nor was Wales, right? And that is because they are socialist. They want a socialist republic or a socialist / monarchy. Keep the monarchy as a figurehead, but nothing else, no power whatsoever, which is basically what's happened to England currently, right? So I'm going to run this, and hopefully you'll all understand it.
Anything? This is like an 800-mile long island or something. Like what? In this day and age, it just seems quite absurd. Like when people talk about, like the separatist groups. Also, I remember recently there was a very suspicious political party called for Northumbrian Independence, and it was using the language of nativism and localism, but it was always countersignaling any patriotic activity. And then it was revealed that the guy behind it was a Labour part of the Labour Party, and the whole thing had been a ploy to split the I think it was at the time the UKIP vote in the Northeast. Take it away. They were worried about working class English people voting for UKIP, so they're like, if we give them a local party, they can that appeals to their local identity, then it'll destroy. So yes,
that is what he's saying about working class English people, right, and especially in the north. That's why we need to keep pushing forward with this and explaining to them that you shouldn't be using middle class university graduates indoctrinated to believe certain things with Scottish ancestry, because you're going to end up alienating.
You should be very suspicious of any of these calls for the breakup of the union. I think they don't.
Can you hear what he's saying? Be very suspicious of people like me. Yet, me and you and this audience are not getting a voice in Restore Britain. And there is a counter argument to this, so strong, right? But the British establishment, the unionist establishment, will not allow that voice out there, right? They control the algorithms. They control the media. They control all of these things. If you was to give the English an independence vote tomorrow, they know what the answer is going to be. It will be to leave the union, right?
Don't make sense economically. Obviously, everyone is justified in wanting to protect the uniqueness of their culture. The Scots have a unique culture. It shouldn't be homogenized and blended into some grey
hybrid.
Yeah, that's not what I'm supporting. The union, which they voluntarily entered into,
did quite well out of it.
Yeah, they did. They're our brothers, and they helped us with the British Empire. We wouldn't have been able to do it without them.
Indeed,
so that's what I like about Scotland. It's like it's part.
They didn't exactly enter into it voluntarily. They bankrupted themselves because they tried to compete with the English, and it was the Darien project, which again, if you look at the grand strategy at the moment, there are things going on in the world that are still affecting that, right? And the Union and Unionists, the British, if you want to call them that, attacked the American dominions of English 70 years after its formation, because they stood up in the United States of America and said, we want the same rights as an Englishman. They didn't say a Scotsman, they didn't say a Welshman, they didn't say an Irishman. They said an Englishman, right? That's fact, not fiction.
We're the same people in the sense for the last 200 years or so. We've been fighting together, and the idea of like this Mel Gibson fake history where they're just poor little Ewoks in kilts who've been oppressed, it's like ridiculous. And it won't help them at all. It won't help them. It won't help Scotland to be strong. It won't help Wales to be strong. It won't help them. Right now we have to.
So what he's doing is he's protecting Scotland, the Union. He's protecting Wales, and he's protecting Ireland. I believe Ireland will be fine because it will be a dominion of England, right? The other two, which are run by socialists, extreme socialists, are attacking England, right? So what he's doing is protecting Scotland, 5 million people, Wales, 3 million people. The only way you will turn them countries around, and especially because of the regionalisation, is to say, there's the border, you're now independent, right? And he is protecting them. And this, again, Harrison Pitt has put this full video out on St. George's Day.
Present a united front and all of us together as British.
Right? There's a counter argument to all of this. I'm going to show you this one as well, because I think it's... Now, again, I'm going to share this with you. Oh, it's gone off again. I'm going to share this one off with you. This is worrying, right? Like I've said, I'm worried about who is cancelling, but Rupert Lowe is the only person who's come close to say, I'm talking about the English, right? He put out a message, he's proud to be English. He's put out that we need to restore England, right? So stronger together, you see the English flag, the Scottish flag, the Welsh flag and the British flag. You haven't got the Irish flag, which is concerning. This is typically someone that, when he talked about trust earlier and being suspicious of, right? Again, this is Harrison Pitt on your screen, but I want you to listen to this.
Where do you stand on British unionism versus English independence?
I'm 100% with the Union.
Yes.
My Scottish ancestors were British patriots. They wanted the Union. I have like records. They had one of my Scottish ancestors in Edinburgh ran a pie shop covered in Union Jacks and pictures of the King. I have ancestors from Ireland. They were all, it was British then. They were all pro-British. This like anti-Britishness, I think, is sometimes is obviously funded by our enemies. It has been, yes, definitely. I think Gaddafi was funding. So I have to say that again because I touched the microphone. I think Gaddafi was funding some separatist groups within the British Isles, so that's been documented. But anything, this is like an 800-mile long island or something. Like, what in this day and age, it just seems quite absurd. Like when people talk about, like the separatist groups. Also, I remember recently there was a very suspicious political party called for Northumbrian Independence, and it was using the language of nativism and localism, but it was always counter-signaling any patriotic activity. And then it was revealed that the guy behind it was a part of the Labour Party, and the whole thing had been a ploy to split the I think it was at the time the UKIP vote in the Northeast. Take it away. They were worried about working class English people voting for UKIP, so they're like, if we give them a local party, they can that appeals to their local identity, then it'll destroy. So yes, you should be very suspicious of any of these calls for the breakup of the Union. I think they don't make sense economically. Obviously, everyone is justified in wanting to protect the uniqueness of their culture.
Mhm.
The Scots have a unique culture. It shouldn't be.
So it doesn't make sense economically for Scotland. I agree entirely. 250,000 of their jobs are particular to the administrative system that stems from England, right? They don't really manufacture anything more. They're being systematically destroyed. I can't remember what the figure is, but there's a massive amount of. We pay more money over Adrian's Wall than we do, or did, to the European Union, right? So people need to understand the economic benefit to England is massive, and he is not putting that argument at all. And this has been allowed to go out by Harrison Pitt, and I believe it contradicts what Rupert Lowe is saying, right? But at the very least, there needs to be an alternative voice expressing the benefits of English independence.
Modernized and blended into some grey
hybrid.
Yeah, that's not what I'm supporting. The union, which they voluntarily entered into,
did quite well out of it.
Yeah, they did. They're our brothers.
Yeah.
They helped us with the British Empire. We wouldn't have been able to do it without them. So, that's what I like about Scotland. It's like it's part of.
He's saying we couldn't have done it without them. From my knowledge of history, we stopped the Highlanders going to Australia and we stopped them going to America. Thomas Sorrell said that. And the reason was because they couldn't do anything. I want you to remember where the song come, Rule Britannia and ruling the waves, and we'll never, never be slaves. It was the English people that were taken as slaves. It was the Irish, and particularly a place called Baltimore in Southern Ireland, where they took the whole village was taken by the Barber pirates into slavery, and the people demanded protection. And the English built a massive navy and privateers to defend against the slavers. And that weren't that long ago, right? And again, it was the English that stopped slavery. The slaves, and if you look at Somerset versus Stuart, 1772, from my knowledge, and I'd have to check my notes, the slave owner was Scottish, right? And the slaves never made their way to Scotland, Wales, or Ireland. And by the way, the Irish, and in particular Dublin, was the greatest slave market in the world at one point. And again, Liverpool, which is this massively left-wing area of England, was, I think it was a guy called William Gregson. He owned a boat or a ship called Zorg. He was a prolific slave trader, and he was a Liverpudlian. He was so big, there was a new town built just outside of Liverpool, and it was called Everton. And he owned the mansion house there. He was the Lord of Liverpool. He was the Lord Mayor of Liverpool. His son was the Lord Mayor of Liverpool. Their house was such a mansion that when they decided to build a road going alongside his property and into Liverpool, evidently there's a big bend in the road, right? I haven't seen it. But what's vanished is they demolished the mansion and the bend has stayed there. And everyone says, why is this road bent? Why does it go round for no apparent reason? And it's because the mansion's no longer there. That's how much money he had. He basically said, that's my property, you can reroute the road. And they did, right? Why am I saying all this? Because the Scots in particular, we didn't need any assistance. They tried to attack the English in the Darien Gap, and they lost. So this guy is being very economic with the truth. And the only reason they come into the Union, and we've got evidence from the archives of the exact conversation from the king, was because they had bankrupted themselves. And there was a lot of distress in Scotland at the time because of that.
We're the same people in the sense for the last 200 years or so. We've been fighting together, and the idea of like this Mel Gibson fake history where like, oh, they're just poor little Ewoks who've been killed, who've been oppressed. It's like ridiculous. And it won't help them at all. It won't help them. It won't help Scotland.
Just to let you know, in the 1800s, if you read the old law books and you read the old stories, they was still tossing sewage, raw sewage, out of their first and second floor windows in Scottish towns into the street below, right? And in one of those passages I read that the guy said you literally had to dodge human excrement and watch out for a window opening because they would literally throw it out the window, right? Just to make sure everyone's aware of this, disease wasn't stopped because of vaccines. It was stopped because of hygiene. And the Scots did not have the same sewage works, and not just from the Romans, but from what the Victorians built, as the English did. And then we started to install special pumps and water systems and use brass to stop transmission of disease. In hospitals, you used to have brass handles, etc., because bacteria couldn't stay alive on a brass handle. There's lots of different things that people need to understand.
And to be strong. It won't help Wales to be strong. It won't help them. And right now we have to present a united front and all of us together as British.
Right, so hopefully I've just put that one up there.
Where do you stand on?
Right. So what? So my argument with doing this video is we have to stay as a party, the English Constitution Party. Not only did Andrew Fontaine, who started the British National Party and the National Front Party or movement, walk away from them because of homosexuality, but he started a movement, and that movement was an English Constitution movement. He started a Constitution movement to enforce the Constitution, because he believed strongly that was where the value was for England. Just to let you know, some years earlier than that, there was another guy that him and 10 others stood as English constitutionalists, as independents. They walked away from what they described technically as the Uni Party. And one of those guys, his name was Winston Churchill. And he stood as an English constitutionalist and he won his seat, right? 6 others won their seats as English constitutionalists. 4 lost their seats, marginally they lost their seats. So people understood in 1924 what the English Constitution was and what the members of Parliament should have been standing for, which is to protect you from the power of the state and especially the Union, right? So that's all I'm trying to say to people. Are there any questions? I've just seen someone, Scotland is rich, still keeps its poor and tenement shitholes and poverty while living in great Scottish estates. No, I agree with you. Let me have a look. The British. Great to have Graham on the issue of England needs to be discussed. Again, I can only rely on you contacting them. I can only rely on you contacting Restore and pushing this forward, right? It's only when they start to see that they will say, listen, there's another argument. We've got 2 arguments. The first is void the Acts of Union. The second is abolish. When I say void, I mean abolish the 2 things. The second is if you want to keep the Union, right? I would certainly say you need to acknowledge the Welsh. They need an independent form of governance, and possibly the Cornish as well, right? I respect them nations. I respect their culture, right? But I want England to be respected. We need to abolish the European Communities Act of 1972. It was ultra-vires. It was unlawful, right? And the mistake, and I don't believe it was a mistake, I believe they knew exactly what they was doing by repealing it, because all of the old laws that come under it were not repealed with it. But they carried on. The stare decisis carried on. Whereas if we had abolished it, we'd be in a far better position than we are now. But you would have to abolish a number of laws. There's at least 50 that we've looked at that subverted the English Constitution. And it also subverted the Scottish Constitution because they have the claim of right. And we need to address that. So there's the two options. One leaves you with a political union. I wouldn't be happy with that. But at the very least, the people standing in that parliament for the English must be English by ancestry. And I would say they would have to be white, right? Because the English are indigenously white. And when you look at what's going on, again, you know, I talk to people in Devon all the time. So have you ever been to London? Have you ever been to East London or South East London, where I come from? Have you ever been to East London? Say what they've done to it. In less than 40 years, they've destroyed it, right? You've got somewhere in the region of 20 million people living in London. They might lie to you and say there's 9 or 12. There's 20 million people living in London. If you had 1 million of them blacks turn up in fucking Devon, it wouldn't be Devon anymore, would it? If you had 1 million of them people turn up in Cumbria, it wouldn't be Cumbria anymore, would it? Right? Well, then people turned up in London. They turned up in Manchester. They've turned up in Leeds. They've turned up in Bradford. Right? But these people in these shires are not seeing it. Elon Musk has said this, right? You're all sitting there thinking it's not going to happen to you. Well, I am absolutely sure when I was 16 years old on anti-immigration marches in 1980, marching through Welling in Kent, right? I am absolutely sure that all the people standing aside them white faces looking at us were thinking they're mad. They think immigration is going to take us over. Go and have a look at those same high streets now. They're all black faces. There's people being stabbed on Welling Corner, having their throats cut. Right? All I'm saying is there's another argument and it needs to be listened to. And if you are truly an anti-establishment party, you need to be looking at being an anti-unionist establishment party. That if you only promote one side of a unionist argument, you're no different to the rest. That's all I'm saying. And then you've got us, the working class, being conned again. Look at Nigel Farage. I've shown the clip on this show, right? Look at Nigel Farage when he sat there and he was talking to Jim Mellon, the big investor, the billionaire. What did he say about Scotland? He said that the Northern English are sick and tired of throwing money over Adrian's Wall when they get more money from the system, right? There are ways of solving this. And one of the ways to solve it is to introduce in England not only mass deportations, but a well-trusted and researched 200-page, including administrative system, right? 200 pages in total, the Hong Kong tax system, that come from the ordinances of the Addington Act of 1803 to 1909. There are some elements that Churchill wanted to put through in the People's Budget that was in 1909, which was defeated by the landowners, right? We would be living in a different nation now if that had happened. So all I'm saying to people is, you do need to vote. You do need to vote Restore. They are strategic in what they're doing. I have got an immense amount of respect for Rupert Lowe, as long as he don't pop off the working class, because we're the people that haven't been indoctrinated by the universities, right? Lucky enough. We're the ones who live in the real world. We're the ones who have to live in them shitholes called London and Manchester and all these various areas that have been overrun. And remember, it was the British that did that. It was the British that regionalised. It was the British that put for the very first time ever English-only national identity in the 2011 census, showing that we was the vast majority, that the British as a nationality, yeah, was a minority of 19%. 11 million people, and half of them are foreigners. So there's lots of things that Rupert Lowe is doing and his team are doing that are positive. But don't expect me to keep my mouth shut when I hear things like that from someone with Scottish ancestry. Well, my ancestry is English. It will always be English, and we will never surrender. And we need to keep pushing forward, and you need to be making representations on Twitter to Rupert Lowe, right, to say, if you are anti-establishment, just look at what Nigel Farage said on that interview, right? I will give him the clip. He can use it against Nigel Farage. Where Nigel Farage said, look, we haven't even got a voice in Parliament, right? When he said English laws, blah, blah, right? We haven't got anyone. There's no one standing for us. What happened to no taxation without representation? They take our money at source with PAYE. If you're an employer, the employer takes your money and gives it straight to the government. It never used to be like that. Why have we even got a tax system with such a wonderful country of proper working people? We can simply go back and say, I'll tell you what, Scotland, there's the border. To get into England, you need a passport. And you're going to respect England again. And by the way, if you want to start misbehaving, you'll get a tariff. Wales the same. Northern Ireland would be completely independent, just like the Isle of Man. This is the third option they never want to talk about, right? It could be the new Hong Kong in this hemisphere, right? And then people will be thriving because they're hardworking, because they're decent people, and because they're Christian, right? But they would be coming under us as a protectorate. And England needs to go back, and what the British did was they destroyed all our English regiments, including a group called the Dragons, which was a regiment that was disbanded in 1964, 62 years ago. They was one of an 800-year-old regiment. They used to call them the Buffs, right? They was an infantry regiment that would go into battle. They didn't wear armor, they wore leather. And when they went into battle, they come from the villages and towns in Kent, and they all went into a bit like the Royal Marines, right? Where a lot of them people come from Devon and joined the Royal Marines. Disbanded in 1964. We had hundreds of English regiments, all disbanded. So on the final point of this about pagans, I haven't got a problem with pagans, right? I am a Christian. A lot of the Christian ceremonies were adopted from paganism, including the marriage ceremony, right? It's the ceremony itself that is important. And remember, as Christians, and I'm going to go back to what this guy said, that we used to hang Catholics in the 1800s. Let me tell you something now. There's a book here. Select Statutes and Cases and Documents, 1909, to illustrate the English constitutional history. And it tells you, because the book's there, the Roman Catholic Emancipation Act. And again, it says Jesuits. They were banished from England. If they was hung in the streets, so fucking what? They knew what they was doing, right? Jesuits are and did cause civil wars in this country. Jesuits did, right? They are the military wing of the Roman Catholics. By the way, people, as soon as Tony Blair was he wasn't a prime minister anymore, he'd left Parliament, where did he go? He went to Rome. What did he do? He kissed the Pope's hand and became a Catholic. So if you want to be suspicious of anyone, you want to be suspicious of who and what the Jesuits are doing. There is a much higher long-term strategy going on here than anyone's ever imagined could keep going, right? And bearing in mind, the Swiss kicked them out. So did the English, right? So it's not always just about the Jews. And by the way, Jimmy Goldsmith knew how dangerous they were. Jimmy Goldsmith was a Jew. Jimmy Goldsmith, he may have been a Zionist, but I'll guarantee if he see what was going on now, he would change his mind. Not sure how many people are watching. I think we've got just over 500. Don't forget, sharing is caring. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It's really important to help us out as much as possible. And as many of you as possible, put this across to these people in a very polite, normal way and say, listen, you cannot be promoting this unless, if you are anti-establishment, you need to have something there, and you whatever the reasoning behind that, but my camera died. Apologies. That's it. So I've come up to an hour. I'm actually going to have something to eat and go to sleep. I am seeing Jace, I think it is, Jason and the wonderful Laura tomorrow in Devon. There's a few of us going to Chagford, Jubilee Hall, which is not far from me, on Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Anyone who can get there, please do get there. But remember, it's not about me, but we do need to be pushing forward. We want to be talking about England. Is 412 on tonight? Am I on 412 tonight? Let me have a look. Is it Friday night? Am I on 412s tonight? I have not got a clue. Go and have a look, someone, and tell me. Look forward to it, Graham. Let's have a look. You or a troll. Let's have a look. Thanks, Graham and Patriots. So thanks. God bless. Keep going. DD. Screen has turned itself off again. It will be back. Hopefully you're all seeing me again now. Let me have a look. Night, DD. So God bless to everyone. And don't forget what I believe in. The Constitution is the solution. If you was to enforce the Constitution, we'd be impeaching judges. We would purge fascists and communists from our system altogether and return England to being England. That's it. Good night. God bless.